Okay guys, so we got the block cleaned, as you can see. We got the head cleaned. We have the new part just arrived from Honda as the head gasket. Of course, you have to change the head gasket. You cannot reuse head gaskets. On the other hand, head bolts. These are the part. That's the part number for the head bolts. Head bolts can be used. It has to be measured first. They're cheap, so I don't see why you just don't change them. So you can just change them. You need 10 of them. Make sure when you open this bag, you don't bend the gasket. You don't damage it. It's very sensitive. As you can see, the previous gasket, when we took out all this, was white. That was the indication where it was leaking from. As you can see, this is it's ready. Just like that. The head was also cleaned. We're gonna drop the head on. Here we go. The head is nice and clean. Have to be very gentle with that. Make sure the dowel pins line up and drop it. It is sitting where it should be. We just have the exhaust in the way here, the turbo. Okay guys, so we're just gonna grab a quart of oil like that. Dip the head and the threads. Try not to have too much oil in there. You don't want it to hydrolock. If there's too much oil in the hole in the bottom, you're gonna have to compress all this oil through the bolt with the bolt. So that's gonna be a big problem. It's lubricated, but not excessive. And we're just gonna do this with every single bolt. Okay guys, so we got all the bolts in place, oiled and ready. We're gonna snug them down and then we're gonna show you the torque sequence. Of course, you start from the middle out when you tie them. Okay, so they're all snugged down. Now we're gonna start torquing them. So the first sequence, we're gonna start at 40 Newton meter or 30 foot-pound. At the same order, we're gonna start from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Here we go. So 40 Newton meter. So we're done with the 40 Newton meter, 30 foot-pound. Now it's time to do a couple revolutions. We have to do a couple of steps with 90 degree. So I like to put a dot on these studs, even though I have my ratchet, my torque ratchet does angles, but I like to also visually make sure it did the same angle, it did the right angle, which is going to be 90 degree in this case. So here we put a couple dots with the white out on these studs, and we're going to make sure it was the 90 degree. Now we set this to 90 degrees, and again on the same order. Perfect. Nice. So we did 30 foot-pound, we did 90 degrees, we're gonna do another 90 degree in the same sequence. We did 30-pound, 90 degrees, 90 degrees, and now that's the last step to another 90 degrees. Okay guys, so now this head is torqued down, 30 foot-pound, 90 degrees, 90 degrees, and 90 degrees. Same order. Now we set the chain to the right markings that we had originally. As we marked it, we had to the error and the dimple here. Same thing here, and down on the crankshaft. I'd like to put this guide here now. Okay guys, so we're just gonna snug these down. These should be torqued to 10 foot-pound. Also, we're gonna snug these down. And these two also should be up to 10 foot-pound. We're gonna snug this one for now. This has to be 16 foot-pound. Okay, we're looking good, guys. The guides are in place, the chain in place, all the marking are lined up. It's time to go up and put this hydraulic tensioner back in place. Okay guys, so we basically, again, here's the markers lined up. I held this guide like that and kept it open, and I put the tensioner in place, and now we tighten this back. As you can see, when I pushed here, it moved, but we're gonna line it up again. It should be good now. And these two bolts should be torqued down to 9 foot-pound. Make sure, before you put it in, make sure you have the filter. That screen in the back, make sure this was put in. Okay, so one last time before we release that tensioner. We have our markings set here. And we have our bottom mark set. Now we can release that tensioner. Now it's released, and we can just spin it to get everything locked up in place. What I'm gonna do now, I'm gonna spin the engine 2 revolutions and make sure the marker is still lined up. Okay, so we set the timing mark, we spun the engine twice, and now the marking are back in place, so we're good. You shouldn't feel any resistance when you spin the motor, especially with no spark plug. Okay guys, so now it's time to clean up the surface here. We already scraped all the old silicone off of here. Just make sure there's no oil residue, so we can put the new silicone. We're gonna do the same thing with the cover. We're gonna clean up the cover very well. I'm just gonna take this off to get a little bit wiggle room here on that line. Here we go. Okay, so I'm gonna clean up here, and I'm gonna start by putting the silicone RTV in the bottom section here first. Very important, make sure the two corners are very clean. And now you can put a glob of silicone on this corner here and one on that corner. Then I'm gonna put a layer on the oil pan. Okay, so we put a layer on the bottom. I'm gonna put some light here. And some right there. Just like that. And we're gonna put another layer on the cover just in case sometimes it wipes off while we're putting the cover down, so we have a little bit extra. And here I like to put a little silicone on the separation where the head gasket goes between the head and the block. Just like that. And of course we're gonna put the whole cover, but just little extras on those areas. And here also. Again, that's the other end where the head gasket, where the head separates from the block. Here we go, guys. So we have all around here all these dots, and we put a very thin layer again on the bottom. We have silicone down there, but just a very thin layer just in case. And now very careful. Make sure you don't wipe off the silicone by touching something here. and just like that, in place. You had the two very long ones. One will go here. You have this other long one. Goes right here. So we have the two very long ones. They go right here. And then you have the little shorter, the one before that. They go two here. And we have two in the bottom and one here. One above the sensor, the solenoid. So we're gonna snug these just a little bit. And again, we're gonna do the same thing with the 10mm bolts. Just snug a little bit, since we still have wet silicone here. I usually like to snug the bolts a little down, let the silicone heal, dry up a little bit, then we can torque them down to the right number. Okay, so again we snug the timing cover bolts down. It's not tight yet. So the 12mm bolts will be 24 foot-pound and the 10mm bolts will be 9 foot-pound. Two different size bolts with different size torques. And right now we're gonna put that tensioner cover. We already cleaned up the surface here. I cleaned up the cover. And we put the RTV silicone on it. Just like that. And these 10mm bolts are also 9 foot-pound, just like the timing covers. Again, we're just gonna snug them down for now till the silicone heals, dries up, and then we can torque them down to 9 foot-pound. Okay, so we torqued this timing cover down. Now the silicone healed, it's all dried up, so it's all good to go. Now I'm gonna plug this fuel rail back. And we got these two bolts that hold the harness to the back of the head. Here you go, guys, just with the help of a little mirror like that. You'll see where it should go. Right here. And we can put some grease or oil, any lubricant here around this O-ring to make sure it doesn't get caught or break. I put some white lithium grease here and ready to go. went right in. Okay, so I'm just gonna put some grease on the head of that bolt so it stays in place, won't fall out. We plug the fuel pressure sensor, we plug the solenoid. Now it's time to put the intake manifold, and then we're gonna clip the insulator on top of it. If you need to change the intake manifold gasket, now's the time. This looks fine, perfectly fine, so there's no reason to change it right now. And again, I'm just gonna put some white lithium grease here on that bolt, just like that, to make it stick to the socket so it won't fall out while installation. And again, just peek through that hole on the intake manifold to line yourself up. And now we're gonna snug these 3 bolts and the 2 nuts down. The torque spec is 18 foot-pound. And now we can try to slide this back in here and clip it. That will clip in the fuel rail, and that will go through these 2 holes. And now, basically from that bolt hole right here, to that other bolt hole here. We clean up the bottom here, and now we can just drop it in place. Just like that. And now we can clean up that cover also. Take all the silicone off of it, and we'll put that cover back. And just like that. Just gonna snug them down by hand, just like that. Let it sit for 10 minutes or so, and then we're gonna torque them back down. Okay guys, so all these bolts holding this cover, and these 3 are all 9 foot-pound. Okay, so first thing first, I'm just gonna clean up this O-ring here. and put some white lithium grease on it. Make sure it slips right in here. And clean this up. Make sure you line up that pipe in the back. And slip the pipe in the back inside. Okay guys, so now we can put this timing solenoid back. Make sure that gasket back in place, and the screen, there's a little screen in here to filter the oil. Make sure it's back in place. And these also are 9 foot-pound. I'm just gonna clean the silicone from this corner here and that back corner before it dries up, and we're gonna put a fresh coat of silicone before we put the valve cover back. And before we start fully tightening everything, we have to make sure we put all the bolts in first. And now that oil line here. Make sure the washers go back in place. And that we're gonna torque down to 12 foot-pound. Okay, maybe before we put this, we'll just install the bracket in the back. We have that bolt in the back now for the bracket. Now we can put that heat shield back. just gonna put these by hand. We're not gonna tighten them till we put the valve cover, just in case this will be in the way. And now we can probably put this high pressure fuel pump back. This is very important. Make sure you fit this in. It has a little knob in here that has to fit in the notch, so make sure it lined up. So the notch is facing up, so this has to go this way. It's a very tight fit. Make sure it goes in even, so try to alternate between both bolts till it's all tight. Don't fully tighten one without the other. I'm not going to tell you to torque this down, but this usually have to be snug, they have to be tight. And that's how you release those type of clamps when they lock. Just insert a flathead. It's like a puzzle, guys. Everything will fit back in place. Muscle memory of all these wiring and hoses will just tell you where it goes. We forgot that foam for the fuel line. And now we put the two grounds down here. Okay, so it's time to put that valve cover back. We're gonna put a drop of silicone here, one back here on the separation of the timing cover, one in the corner back here, and one in the front here, to make sure oil doesn't seep through the cracks and curves in here. And again, we left this loose here so we can give us some room. And now these timing cover bolts should be torqued to about 5.5 foot-pound. Okay, so we put the tensioner, we put the harmonic balancer back. Now it's time to put that new belt. Now we put that motor mount back in. and the big part goes toward the inside. The longer bolt on the front. Now we put the spark plugs and the coils, and we should be ready to start the car. Refill the coolant, of course, and we're gonna do an oily change. Put new we put new oil and filter, and we should be good to go. Okay, guys. So moment of truth. We have the coolant is full. We put new oil, new filter, and time to start it. I like it. It's running good, smooth. We're gonna let it run till it reach operating temperature, and we're gonna let it sit and start again and make sure no coolant is being burned. Everything should be okay by now. Thank you for watching, and please don't forget to subscribe.